Minutes is that we're going to have students come up here and read from their favorite part, as well as faculty, of the novel Me, Who Dove Into the Heart of the World by Sabina Berman. We're just working through a Skype issue, trying to get her through Skype, and she's actually in Mexico. As Dean Parker, Associate Dean Parker already said, she felt ill and wasn't able to come here personally, but she was gracious enough to at least try to read via Skype. And before we continue, I just want to thank a few people, and as I always do, I'd like to thank especially the administrative specialist, Carolina Paredes, who sets up all the food and all the behind-the-scenes stuff. All of my colleagues in the English department. Oh, by the way, I'm a professor in the English department. I teach U.S. Latino literature, Comp 1, Comp 2, creative writing. I also like to thank some of the administrators for without this event, which is for you, for the students. It is designed and our inspiration, and every year we get together as an English department and work hard, and promote the study guides and try to incorporate the books that have been selected so you have a wonderful experience here at Broward College. And you continue on to have a fruitful and happy and successful life. And I'd like to acknowledge our campus president, Dr. Avis Proctor. Our dean, who academic services, writing program, works with library. he runs our writing program. Without him, this is all behind the scenes stuff. He's really been very supportive over the years, as well as our associate dean, Karen Parker. I can give her a big hand. So let's give a big hand to Dr. Nassi. He's over there. That jacket is mine and he's renting it. I want it back. So we need some volunteers. If you'd like to, this microphone is on right here. And you just come up here and just read your favorite section and just introduce yourselves. And if I can get up there and talk to you, because I'm not the best public speaker, I know you can. All right. So, and if we get her on Skype, I'll let you know, and then we can listen to her. Okay? All right. Who's first? You don't want me reading in Spanish, do you?
Yes, read something in Spanish, please.
Translate it back from English to Spanish.
If you give me a copy, I can do it. Can someone bring me a copy of the book?
Anybody want to get language? Oh,
Don't worry about it. I'll use my Spanish. It's going to be fun. Don't go. I've been told that I have a weird Spanish accent. I'm from Argentina, and there are a lot of Italians in Argentina. So my mother's Italian, and I speak what's called Italian Spanish. So you can deal with it. Huntington. Estaba parado en el piso segundo, mirando un mapa de todo lo que estaba alrededor de él. Y decía, tenés que tener un par de huevos para pensar que vas a tener todo este mundo abajo tu poder. Y encima empezó con detalles impresionantes a dibujar un mapa que nunca existió en la vida. En ese mapa era todo el camino de Tuna. De Tuna que venían del Valle de México y que pasaban por la punta de la Florida y terminaba en Oregon. Y ahí empezó a pensar en qué mundo podemos tener un futuro. That's it. Yes.
Can you just tell us what page you're on? So that people follow. We have someone who's doing it on.
I made all that up anyway. All right, let's go. See, the torture worked. Seriously, I made it up, but suppose. It's the art translation.
I knew it was something.
This is when Karen is going out to all the mixers. A mixer was a nighttime meeting in a dimly lit backyard where they cooked hamburgers and played music, and students in shorts and t-shirts stood in groups of twos or threes to talk and laugh and talk more and sweat in the summer heat, staring into each other's pupils and drinking glasses of alcohol disguised with artificially flavored refreshments, essentially in the attempt to form a stable two. That is, in the attempt to find someone to mate with. At a certain point in the evening, when several couples had already formed, the music became slow and the lyrics gave mating instructions, and there began phase 2 of the coupling. The pairs embraced and took one step that way, one step this way. The pubic area of one person's genitals pressed into the pubic area of the other person's genitals, albeit separated by a few layers of intermediary fabric. Those who were still pairless kept talking among themselves, louder now and drinking faster, distressed that the night was moving on without them having found anyone to mate with. Suddenly, I would stumble drunkenly and fall onto the grass. No, suddenly one would stumble drunkenly and fall onto the grass. Suddenly, 5 would leave the mixer Indian file, downcast and defeated. Suddenly, in a dark corner, 4 or 5 would pass around a marijuana cigarette and then also collapse onto the grass, defeated. All the while, those who had already found a mate kept embracing in the dance area. One step that way, one step this way, their genital regions pressed against the intermediary fabric, the songs giving mating instructions. Then came phase 3. A few hand-holding couples would enter the house where the party was taking place and go upstairs to the bedroom and close the door. And this is what they did. Take off their clothes and mate, this time for real. Technically, their genitalia finally united with no interceding fabric. In 89% of instances, the process involved a penis and a body cavity. The male introduces erect penis into the female's vaginal cavity, 65%, or anus, 12%, and the two of them thrash energetically. As is the case in copulation with long quadruple vaginals. On fewer occasions, the penis was introduced into and sucked by the female's oral orifice, 12%, as occurs only in the females, most notably erect primates. In only 11% of cases did the process involve female genitalia in the male oral orifice. The females separated their legs and the males licked between them diligently, raising their heads at, on average, 20-second intervals to take air, as occurs in bonobos, meerkats, and other female-dominated species. All of this activity was accompanied by sound, screaming, wailing, moaning, swearing, etc. The statistics are approximate as they come from a sample taken by a single observer, me looking through keyholes and making notes, over the course of 3 mixers. Meanwhile, as the copulation phase was going on in the bedroom, below on the grass, the defeated, still clothes were taken ill. Some cried, others stumbled from tree to tree, searching for solitude so as to vomit alone. One might embrace a tree trunk, arguing that he missed a certain human being that was his true mating partner, and who lived very far away, or some other absurd nonsense.
And it's important to note that Karen Nieto is on the autism spectrum. And so she sees these encounters with her peers. She sees the college students mingling and mixing and dating and she calls it mating, right? In her very unique perspective. And I'm going to piggyback off of what Antoy just read and continue the book. Selma was #1 at the university when it came to mating. It's interesting what that means. She rarely repeated partners and was never lacking one. This is how it worked out. She was in close contact, as she called, speaking about personal things, with 30% of the university. Again, these percentages are approximate. And of that 30%, there was always someone new to me at a mixer to enter into genital contact with. So by the time I stopped seeing her, Selma had already exchanged sexual fluids from various orifices with 10% of the university's student body. It's important to note that it was a large university. But here's what still makes me laugh. Selma didn't even realize she was good at it. Some nights, when the two of us were lying in bed in the dark, she would say, "Oh, Karen, I'm so alone. I just can't find a mate." But as I said before, this is common with humans. In addition to wandering around thinking that they think before they exist, they are usually thinking about something besides whatever is right in front of their faces. Other times, she would say something even odder. "Oh, Karen, I really have to find myself." Which to me was just the limit. Where did she expect to find herself if it wasn't right there, where she was, lying in bed, talking about it? Nevertheless, Selma went on 3 times a week at 6 o'clock in the evening with the express intention of finding herself. She'd put on a kilt and white knee-high socks and braid her hair in 2 braids and walk over to the Faculty of Psychology, where on the 4th floor, she would enter the office of a 75-year-old therapist and lie on the couch in order to try to find herself for precisely 50 minutes. Inconceivable. In a room that measured only 4 by 4 meters, she had 50 minutes and still couldn't find herself. Why she dressed that way like a high school girl, I don't know. But she would come back crying because she hadn't managed to find herself that time either. "Oh, Karen," she said one night lying in bed, "every day I'm a little more lost."
This one's not on. There we go. Is it working? Christian, you're my cue man.
Is it working, Christian? All right. Okay, continuing with Karen on campus, as a highly functioning autistic character, person, narrator, she is integrated into the campus by becoming a case in quantitative psychology, one of the cases students have to learn from. So this is a day she's going to the quantitative psychology class, and at the end of it, there's a little lesson for all students. So the professor, Professor Pauline Glickman, rode into class on a yellow bicycle. Please note the very good description, writers. Dismounted and left it against a wall. Big square framed glasses, gray bangs, children's lace-up shoes, a beaver smile her 2 front teeth showed when she laughed. She made me, and Karen always capitalizes me. She made me come up to the dais where she, beside the blackboard, introduced me to the quantitative psychology students like this. Before you today, Karen Nieto, hypothetically, a highly functioning autistic. Based on the enthusiasm of the intro, I thought they were going to applaud me, but that wasn't the case. But from her desk, Selma turned to her fellow students, and you heard about Selma, her roommate, and whispered, "That's my friend, that's my friend," as if I were her gift to the class. The professor continued, "That's what we'll be doing Mondays, nailing down Karen's diagnosis. And now, let's get to know her a little bit. Karen knows the names of all the Nobel Prize winners in science. Karen, please take a seat at the table and give us their names." I took a seat at the table and gave their names. The Nobel laureates in physics, chemistry, medicine, economics from 1901 to 1994, which was the year we were living in. When I finished the very long list of names, I received a standing ovation from the students. One student asked me very respectfully, "Now, could you name all the kings of the French dynasties, please?" That's satiric. And she says, "I don't know them." and you could hear an ah of disappointment in the audience. But what could I do? I didn't know them. So Karen Nieto proceeds a little further, and is one Monday she goes to class, and she's given a series of ink blot. Does everyone know the Rorschach tests? And that's kind of a funny part. But this is the part that I think carries a little lesson for all of us who are students. She gave me, this is a test she's getting. She gave me some colored wooden triangles. Using them, I had to replicate the design she showed me on different pieces of cardboard. But then she took out a stopwatch and held it close to my face and gave me only 1 minute to recreate the design. In several instances, I was unable to replicate it before she called time, and she dropped the stopwatch with her thumb, which frustrated me very much in the end, and I became furious. So the following week, I arrived having studied and asked her to give me the triangle test again. No, thank you, the professor said. Today we'll do a different test. I want to do the triangle test again, I insisted. No, Karen, she said with a hostile face. And then in the book, she draws it. She has an emoticon. I, in turn, put on my hostile face. Karen, she threatened, don't be obstinate. But obstinate is what I am. I opened my backpack, took out the box of triangles that I bought at the university bookstore, right in the quantitative psychology section, opened it up, spilled the colored triangles out on the table with a blam. Then I sat and slowly, carefully replicated the designs one by one until I had completed the 35 of them that Dr. Blickman had showed me in the previous class session. The professor had gone to sit at a desk, and she and the students let me work in silence. It's true that rather than 35 minutes, 1 minute for each triangle, it had taken me 7 days. But I've never denied that I'm slow. What's the lesson in that, my friends? There's several. What's one of them? Challenge your professors. That's one.
It's a terrible idea.
Dr. McFeeters, I'm sure you're challenged every day. You're the one that puts the chessboard out on the table. What's another lesson from Karen Nieto's perspective? Never give up. 35 minutes, 7 days. To Karen, it was all about what? Mastering the task. And she did it. And that is one of the inspirational things about the novel, Me Who Dove Into the Heart of the World. She does her things differently, creatively, sustainably, and in her time. So think about it, all right?
That silly guy who made that joke. So what I love about the novel is the way it gets us to think about our relationship with language throughout. I love the beginning of the novel, where we get to see how she's acquiring language a little later than maybe other people. And she's taught, there's that scene where all the words are written, like the words for refrigerator, table, silverware, so that Karen can slowly learn those words. And finally she acquires more and more language. But what's so touching is later on we see the same kind of idea repeated when her aunt passes away and she dies. So we see what is it that happens. What happened to the aunt that led to her death? Remember? Was it an aneurysm, wasn't it? Right? And so her ability to use language is dissipating, right? It comes back and then it disappears, it comes back and it disappears. So I think the part where she's dying and Karen's there, and even though Karen has a different kind of a way of communicating with people, you can see the strength of the relationship between the two of them. So I want to read a couple of parts where you see the passage of the death of Diana. So that night, she speaks into my ear, waking me, goodbye. And after a wave crashes in the sea, one floor beneath us, good luck. I wonder if there's a great beyond. I wonder if there's a great beyonder. And then after another huge wave crashes, I'll be in touch if I can. Or send you a sign. And if I can't, well, then I won't. Her breathing suddenly grows deeper, and outside the sea thunders again. And when the wave spreads across the sand with us, I think I hear where my aunt's heart is, a click. So that's that final moment, right? And so even though the language is still confused, there's that weird line. There's I wonder if there's a grape as the fruit, B spelled B-E-E, and yonder. So it shows that the aunt is, her ability to use language is slipping, yet they have perfect understanding of one another. Right? The other part I think is interesting is when Karen has to deal with the remains of her aunt, what to do with her body. And it's interesting. Do you remember where she buries Karen's body? It's outside the house. It's near her other relative, right? But she doesn't use a casket, right? She simply buries the body in a hole out in nature, right? And so we see the Karen attending to that. You see there's a black marble gravestone with the letters of her name cut into it and painted white, Lorena Niento, right? That's Karen's mother, right? A gravestone with no date of birth or death, or cross or star of David or anything. The Nieto family has had no religion since the 19th century. But then I remember that my aunt and her sister didn't speak. I don't even know when they stopped speaking because my aunt never again talked to me about my mother. So it occurs to me that if they didn't speak when they were alive, it might make them uncomfortable to be buried side by side now underground. But they'll exist, stay there like that for as long as the earth exists. So I retrace my steps, crushing crabs beneath my boots, crunch, 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 and I deposit my aunt on the dewy grass at the edge of the yard where the sand begins. The gardener's shovel is resting against the trunk of a lemon tree. I dig, and I excavate a rectangular hole piling up the dirt beside it. I have naked aunt sunbathes in the grass, her two legs off to the left, and her face to the sun, her green eyes open, like Herbie like her. Even dead, she looks elegant in that pose. Soaked in sweat, I picked her up once more. I jumped down into the hole and placed her on the ground. I climbed out of the hole and look at my dirty white jeans and dirty hands. I pick up the shovel, fill it with dirt from the pile I made, and toss it over my aunt. The first shovelful of black dirt falls on her white face. The white face of my elegant aunt, and that is when I can't take it anymore. I stab the shovel into the grass, lean my forehead against the handle, and stand there, not moving. I don't know for how long, until I see a shadow pass over the round tip of my work boots. I look up, and the black buzzard, its wings taut, soaring in the wind. I shovel the pile of earth back into the grave until it's filled. My aunt asked me to bury her in the ground with no coffin and no grave marker. So you don't get your hopes up. Thinking I'm there, she breathed into my face, which she held with both her hands. And then she added in another breath, so you don't feel tied to some silly clump of dirt. I disobey. Around the border of the quadrangle of earth covering my aunt, I place little white stones so I won't forget the spot. So it's just a tender moment where she's laying her aunt to rest. But I think it's interesting also because of there's a kind of ritual and ceremony to the burial. But the fact that there is no casket, right? And the aunt specified that too. But I think it gets us to think about that theme again over and over. What's our relationship with nature? always, Karen seems to understand nature more than everyone else, or maybe the non-autistic people who are so concerned with human relations, right? So, I mean, I love that part. I guess I just felt like reading it. So there.
This is the part of the book when she's reading Little Woman and her aunt comes into the room.
Can you give us the page, please?
Page number 23.
How much? 23.
23. Can you hear me? What are you reading? My aunt asked. Little Woman by Lucia May Alcott. That was the first book I read, she said. Please, let's have a look. I gave it to her. She turned it over in her hands. A book with very worn green binding and yellow pages. She flipped through it. She stroked one page in particular. Yes, this was my book, she murmured, and kissed a page which made no sense to me. Do you like it, Karen? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Wait, tell me what it's about. It's about a girl named Jo, right, who has a boyfriend, and then Jo cuts off her hair to sell it and buy food for her family because they're hungry. And then her sister, who is prettier than her, marries her boyfriend who is rich. That's what it's about. But tell me the story, Karen. This is the story, I said, tensing up. But what about all the little things in between? Those are just little things in between. They don't serve any purpose. You take them away and it's still the same story. My aunt thought that over for a little while, squinting her eyes. That's how she thinks, when she's thinking very hard. And finally she concluded, well, you're right. You know, you have a very special kind of intelligence. But tell me this, do you like it? Do I like it, I asked. Because I didn't understand the question. What do you feel when you're reading it? I feel that I'm reading it, I answered, getting flustered. You sometimes feel sad? Or, I don't know, maybe like you want to cry? No. And I banged my fist on the table, and my aunt's eyes filled with tears. You feel nothing, she said very quietly. Well, that was something of an exaggeration. 28 years later, recalling and writing what my aunt said, I know how to reply. I do feel something. I feel fear almost all the time. I feel happy when something happy happens. And I feel pain if someone hits me or if I hit myself. And when it gets late, I feel sleepy. And I also feel hunger when I get hungry. It's true, though, that I seem not to feel all those complicated things and imaginary things that standard humans feel. Standard, normal, typical. Standard humans, humans within the norm. I don't feel those one-on-one things that are somewhere between pain, fear, and happiness, or between hunger and sleepiness, which the way I see it is to my advantage. I mean, I know I'm dim-witted, at least compared to standard humans. I know that on a standard IQ test, I score somewhere between idiot and imbecile. But I have 3 virtues, and they are big ones. 1, I don't know how to lie. 2, I don't fantasize, so things that don't exist don't worry me or hurt me. 3, I know that I only know what I know, and that what I don't know, which is a lot more, I am sure I don't know. And that, like I said, over the long run has given me a big advantage over standard humans.
Excellent readings. Anyone else?
Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. One of the, there are many themes in this novel, but I especially liked Karen's, let's see, her disagreement with Descartes. And of course, Descartes is René Descartes, French philosopher, 18th century, mathematician, and also philosopher, and of course much of modern philosophical thought comes from his syllogism, I think, therefore I am. And of course Karen takes a little bit of offense with that syllogism, and I'm going to start with page 74. Actually page 73. And this is when she talks about Descartes. She talks about him and Darwin. I love her comparisons with him and Darwin as well, but we'll start with 73. Finally, we read a certain René Descartes from the 17th century, and I wrote very carefully. Descartes writes, "I think, therefore I am." That is definitely and obviously idiotic. Anyone with two eyes in their head knows that any creature exists first and then does other things, like move its fins, or breathe, or spread pollen, or think. Human beings, like every other being that exists, exist first and then, at times, think. Proof of that is that I have seen many human beings exist when they are asleep, and I have heard of others who existed when they were already dead. You didn't understand a thing, the walrus said curtly in the following class. And of course, the walrus referred to one of her professors. I think it was Dr. Stern, wasn't it? I think it was Dr. Stern. My entire course is structured to lead logically to the only unarguable difference between humans and animals, the one Descartes formulates and the one that you, Miss Nieto, Miss Different Abilities, that's what he called her, didn't understand for shit. 23 years later, I walked into a white room to meet a parakeet that didn't only think, but also talked a lot, Max. And then she starts talking about her parakeet, Max. And I'm going to go down to the end of the bottom of page 74, for those of you who have your text. But let me clarify, parakeet Max doesn't disprove philosopher Descartes, though he does think. If you take him out to the garden, perched on your shoulder, and ask him, pointing to the grass, "Max, what color is the grass?" and then show him a cookie, Max will think about it for a bit, about 30 seconds, maybe ask himself why the hell it matters what color the grass is. But since Max wants the cookie, he'll say, "Green." And then show him the and then what I'm absolutely sure of, however, is that Max has never thought, "I think about green, therefore I am." Therefore, Descartes is right in asserting that the only being that thinks that sort of idiocy, is the human being. And all these years later, I do feel confident enough to talk at length about what I think about it. I believe that to sustain on a daily basis the fantasy that first someone thinks and then is what makes it so tiring to be a human being, or in my case, to attempt it. Now there's more about this, but I'm going to go right to the end of the novel when Karen Nieto, in her wonderful literal fashion, talks about what she was going to entitle her novel. And that is on page, I hope I have it, 235. At the beginning of the page. As I was writing this book, I went through several possible titles. Me and the Tuna, since we're the protagonists. 2. Me and the Tuna and my aunt, since I'd like to invite my aunt into the title. And this is the beauty of Karen's literalism, because remember she says she eschews metaphor. She doesn't understand metaphor nor euphemism, for those of you who read the novel, for various reasons. Number 3, another possible title.
I am, therefore, and with difficulty, I think, which describes my condition and my advantage over standard humans. Her fourth option for a title was simply me. And her fifth possible title, Me Who Dove, a title that presents a few problems. It sounds odd, I think. It's grammatically incorrect, or something, I don't know. And then B, another reason why it sounds odd, it's not that relevant to what I've written up to this point, and in fact refers specifically to one afternoon on the high seas, when with my head half out of water, I finally thought of phase 6, the final phase of the only original idea I've ever had in my life, an experience that I decided not to recount out of modesty. And I will end here. Thank you.
Readers? Sir Bianchi?
Very hard to shut me up sometimes. I want to piggyback, I'm good at that, off of what Donna Samet just read on the subject of Descartes. And talking about how Karen Nieto does not understand metaphor. She's very literal, and in some ways you might say she cuts through the BS. She sees things for what they are, and it's really quite refreshing. So on page 107, she writes, Descartes didn't write only about human thought. He also wrote at the end of his life a very short book on happiness, which I did read and which, unfortunately, is less famous than the others. After many words and 24 pages, Descartes wrote that happiness is a matter of the senses. Seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, that is happiness. Then Descartes wrote many other pages full of words, which is a shame, because he'd reached the truth on page 25. Yes, the most basic, most happy form of happiness is simply feeling with your senses, thinking with your eyes and skin and tongue and nose and ears. In the turquoise layer of water, I stretched out on my side so I could descend while looking through the tuna mask and through the lucid water's surface to the white clouds. And watching 6 red fish swim from cloud to cloud, it once again seemed so unclear to me why humans need to fantasize. Oops, a yellow fish covered the sun for a moment. Then in the deep blue, a gray ball came swirling at me, and then, after delicately bumping me in 1,000 places, plip, 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 dissolved into 1,000 steel-colored mackerel that darted toward the dark blue. Again, why is fantasy necessary? Fantasy, philosophy, and religion, and the history of imaginary things. Why, when there is a reality and we have our senses? In order to be happy, all you need to do is listen to your senses and not to Descartes. Feel with your senses and without words. All you need is to be in your body in the real world. And I just love it because she makes things simple. And she reminds us that, we can be happy and we don't have to be influenced by all of this other BS.
That is the end of the reading portion. Does anyone have any questions for the faculty or for anyone who was just read? If you do, please just come to the microphone. Any extra credit assignments?
I have a question that I'd like to ask the audience.
Why do you think that Karen Nieto always referred to herself as me and not I.
What was her name again? Karen Yato? It's because when you were reading one of the texts that she didn't know who she was, like her own identification, so she would refer to herself instead of I.
Wonderful question, Professor Salmon. And like most really good questions, Karen asks a lot of them, but I thought it was, she referred to herself as me because she has such a strong, like Montessori child, wild child in her. Children refer to themselves as me. They don't know the grammar, right? And in fact, when they are using case, their pronoun case, they're really learning because adults are so handy to correct them. But me, who dove into the heart of the world, there's a metaphor. So the book is filled with contradictions, with many possible layers of meaning. And my take is just that she has such a strong sense of curiosity, children's inquiry, and childlike wonder that the case is purposeful. I'm in this world, but it's me who's experiencing it.
There are many options. We already have two.
I believe one of the reasons it's in chapter 1, on page 10, her Aunt Isabel is actually teaching her how to speak. It says, to start, she tried to get her to say her first word, and then it repeats the word me 3 times. And that's one of the ways that she tries to teach Karen how to speak. And that was her first word, and she referred to herself as me, and when she was referring to her aunt, she would say you, but she never introduced the word I to her. It was always me.
You're saying that's how she learns language, and how to separate herself from another object in the world.
I'm really piggybacking that response. I think I'm piggybacking that response entirely. But yeah, I mean, if Descartes' proposition is I think, therefore I am, I is the subject, the rest of the sentence is the object, and she sees herself in that part of the sentence. She is first. So that's why the me would be, you place more emphasis on the me rather than the I. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But I think absolutely, if she is, I'm just taking your ideas completely right now, but if at the beginning she fuses with the ocean, and if the ocean is the object world outside of you, and if she's joined one with it, then she is that object also. But it's a kind of empowering object instead.
Yes.
Right? And my last thought, one more, and I don't think this is there, but I'm going to kind of twist it. I wonder if when we're reading it and we don't see ourselves initially like her, she's high-functioning autistic, that we kind of objectify her, we want to stereotype her, we want to label her, we want to diagnose her. Are we treating her as a kind of object? Right? Rather than identifying with her and seeing her as a subject. Someone like us, we're like her, she's like us, we're one. The cycle of life begins like that.
It's way too philosophical for me, Doctor.
Thank you.
Someone had their hand. Go home. Can you stand? Thank you.
I was kind of like, a part of the book that like really caught my eye was her kind of weird relationship with Ricardo.
Oh.
And I was just wondering, because like I got into a few arguments about it, did you think it was predatory? Did you think it was...
You've got another question. We're not doing the me, I thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you think it was benign, like just
had didn't occur, or
Well, I'm not going to answer that. I have my own opinion, but did you hear the question? What kind of relationship?
Relationship did Karen have with Ricardo? Because there are a number of male characters in this novel, Ricardo being one, Pena, I forget his first name, who was the master in the fishing industry in Constellation Tuna. You had Mr. Pena, and then of course you have Ernest Gould. That's another male character in here. What's the relationship between Ricardo and Karen? Did anybody find it? I think you used the word predatory. Did you? That's a great word. Anybody find it predatory? Or otherwise, or other?
I'm sorry, I'll try to stop. I love that question because I think as we're reading, we do get a sense that they're not necessarily equals in some ways, that he knows much more about the world than she does. She has this naivete and this innocence that maybe we feel needs to be protected. But I don't think that he ever crosses a line, so to speak. He does not coerce her, I don't recall. He does not force her, and in fact, they don't actually ever sleep together. Well, they do sleep together, but they don't have intercourse. And in fact, towards the end of the novel, her aunt, I believe it was her aunt, encourages her to go find Ricardo again, because he was one of the only people who had ever kind of exposed her to some sensuality and some romantic or intimate kinds of experiences. But I do feel like I questioned some of the, I read very critically, and I was questioning the relationship, but I think ultimately he served to be like the love of her life in some ways. Maybe the tuna were, really, the tuna were the love of her life, but she kept those lemon tree leaves, and she planted lemon trees because she had a fondness for him, I think.
Anyone else?
Ricardo tells her that she's such a good listener, and they really have this bond. And as I recall, when he catches himself saying that you're half my age. She's like 17 and he's like 34. And he realizes that he could be a parent to her. And he kind of catches himself. I got that idea that, yes, he was thinking about it, her sexually, but he sort of stops. But then also he tries to touch her in an affectionate way, and she puts her boot in his face, and he gets it. And so I think there is this bond, and it crossed his mind, but he doesn't take advantage of her ultimately.
Professor, anybody else on the relationship between Ricardo and Karen? Doesn't he also introduce her to the concept of angels, as I recall? And of course that is a and God, and that is a foreshadow in the end when she's sort of saved by the jellyfish angel, and Dr. Patricia mentioned that this morning. Anyone else have another question?
I don't have a question.
This will be our last question.
It's not a question, I just had something to add. May I?
Okay, this is our last edition.
Okay, now I just wanted to say that it's just about Karen's character who's autistic and she doesn't have the ability to love or to understand that she loves somebody. And that's why I think it's the most heartbreaking moment, the relationship between her and Ricardo. And also, yes, it's heartbreaking. Also, I just wanted to credit Dr. McFeathers for defining this moment beautifully. He said, we've just waited for Godot here. So that's just my conclusion. I understand nobody else is gonna talk after that.
Are we going to have some input by Sabina Berman?
No, we weren't able to reach her. So I do apologize. And this is the end of our session. And I'd like to just to tell everyone that this evening we will have 6 p.m. dinner here, and we also will be having a presentation by Professor Jackson, Michelle Jackson. You have to be here for that. And again, I want to thank everyone for being here, and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much.